This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 76 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, a podcast focused on telling the stories of dreamers, makers, innovators, and influencers. Along the way, we give you some tips and ideas of how you can chase your own big idea and dream and create the world you want to live in. Our guest on today's episode is Hannah Payne. More about Hannah in a moment. On Monday, our guest is Bob Stromberg. He is a comedian and a master of creativity. Recently, he was featured on Little Big Shots with Steve Harvey. He's an incredibly funny guy and has some amazing insights into the world of creativity. Make sure to check out that episode this Monday. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, I want to welcome you and let you know that you can stream this podcast on all of your favorite places. Whether it's iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or iHeartRadio, you can find us. We have some incredible past guests, and you may want to go back and check out some of those episodes that you've missed. So swing on over to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to your podcast. Check out those past episodes and make sure to subscribe while you're there. Now let's jump into our interview with Hannah Payne. I am super excited about today's guest. Her name is Hannah Payne. She is the founder and designer behind the women's fashion line Luba by Hannah Payne. She's also started an incredible foundation called the Love Foundation, which supports women's shelters. Her story is an inspiration to all of us, and I think you're going to have some great takeaways today. So let's jump into today's interview with Hannah Payne. Hannah, thanks so much for taking time out to be on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Now, you're creating some really, really cool stuff, and you've been on a journey in creating your company. We're going to get more into the company, but tell us a little bit about the origin story of how you got to where you are today and the company that you're building.
So it's actually very interesting. I knew I wanted to go into fashion since I was very little. And, my parents kind of saw it as like a more fun job, a hobby, not necessarily a serious career.
Yeah.
And so I remember being a junior in high school, and I found this fashion camp in LA that I went to. And while we were there, they had the parents in a meeting as well. And the person or the dean of the school was saying, this is the perfect school if your child is struggling with school, they're not good at math, all these things. And my mom said, "You are absolutely not going here. You're good at math. You're good at school. You should be going and doing those sort of things." And so I thought, okay, I'll try the traditional school, see how I like it. And in my senior year at the University of San Diego, I was in a class called Social Entrepreneurship, and it was amazing. Every week we had speakers from different companies come in and tell us a little bit about their company and how they gave back in some sort of way. And so for our final project in that class, we were supposed to create a company and then have this social aspect to it. And that's kind of how I basically created Luba. And the business plan that I wrote in that class is actually my business plan. I went back and used the same thing. And I knew I wanted to do a fashion company. And I had kind of grown up my mom volunteers a lot. And so as a child, I would go with her when she would go to different shelters and help out. And, I would play with the kids. And so I knew that I wanted that aspect to be the social portion of my brand. And so that's kind of how I started this journey. And then from there, I put it aside, went to Parsons in New York, was planning on staying in New York. And my husband, who was my boyfriend at the time, got into law school in Colorado. And it was the best law school that he got into. And so we had decided and kind of made a pact before he got in anywhere that wherever he got in, we would move. And I assumed he would probably get into LA. And he did, but it wasn't as good as Colorado. And so we ended up coming back to Colorado, and there's not a lot of fashion here.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'm just going to start my own. It can't be that hard. And it's definitely been a journey, but I think I'm such a believer in everything happens for a reason. And it's been so exciting to live my dream, have it be a reality for me.
That's so cool. I think so often our passions are put to the side on what we're supposed to do or how life's supposed to look. And so many people live in a place of discontentment because they're not doing the things that they're passionate about. And to hear that part of your story of passion is really leading the way for you is really cool.
No, it's very true. And I say this all the time. It's so hard to start a company. And, I'm sure any company, but in fashion in particular, there are so many brands. So as a new brand, breaking in is very hard. And I have to give myself a pep talk every day because I know that if I were to stop, I would lose part of myself. I feel like I would lose part of my soul. And so that's what keeps me going is I have this internal drive that just won't stop.
There's no question of like, you can't go back. And because of that, it's like, it removes some of those questions, it sounds like, and really helps propel you forward every day.
So basically, I think for anybody, there's so much self-doubt that goes into it. And just being a positive person in your head, even though maybe it's not going well, or today is a bad day, or there's something that really went wrong, at a factory, telling yourself that it's going to be okay, mind over matter, especially for me, has really worked. And I know that if I keep staying positive and keep believing that it's going to happen, things eventually start to happen. And I think people get so caught up in, well, I'm not here yet. I'm not doing this yet. This person, is doing this and they're getting all the success. Maybe I should do that. And when I was at Parsons, a speaker came and was telling us the biggest thing that we can do to help ourselves is to stay true to ourselves. Because as soon as we turn into a different designer or try and change because so-and-so wants the brand to be different, as soon as we start doing that, we're going to lose the essence of the brand and you're going to be lost. So just staying true to who you are as a brand, what you need to do, and keep moving forward is, I think, huge.
Yeah, it really is. And people know that authenticity. They know when you're designing from the heart and not from just what the checklist is, what you're supposed to do. And having that passion of the design really, I think, reflects. Let's talk a little bit about the designs that you do. What kind of fashion are you designing?
So we do women's wear. I like to call it a one-stop shop because we do everything from cute, sets that you would wear to brunch or lunch with friends, all the way up to cocktail dresses that you would wear at a wedding. And I've even done custom dresses for some of my friends for their rehearsal dinners, as well as mother of the bride gowns. So I think my favorite part of design and basically the way I design is I think about myself and my friends and life events that they're going through or I'm going through, and I design for those events. And I really love the idea of someone wearing one of my designs to one of the most memorable moments of their life and being a part of that and making them feel absolutely beautiful and special in that moment.
Well, it seems like this new generation of fashion designers are really designing around life and not just fashion itself. I've heard this from different designers in the fashion world and past the fashion world, for that matter, that they're thinking about the purpose of how is this going to be remembered in an event, or how is this going to be part of their story when they tell of that special moment. And it sounds like that's part of the inspiration for you.
Well, that's so true. And I think, especially in my generation, social media is huge. And so, people never want to wear the same outfit twice when they're going to be photographed. And it's so funny. I've heard even people just a few years younger than me say, well, I can't wear that. I wore that a year ago and I posted it. I was like, well, that's okay. But I think that's so true that I want to design something. And yes, I think there are so many designers that do very beautiful avant-garde work. But for me, I want to design something for someone's everyday life. And I want that person to feel absolutely beautiful when they put it on, because there's nothing better than putting on an outfit that you feel great in and the confidence that you exude by wearing that. It's almost like a special power. You feel, like a superhero in it. That's at least how I feel when I put on something that I'm like, this is amazing and it looks great on me and I can't wait for what I'm about to attend or, the event I'm going to.
Oh, I can empathize with that too. I mean, there are certain, pair of pants or jeans that I'm much more comfortable in than others. And I just always feel more at myself when I'm in them. I know that's weird, but I can relate to that.
No, that's completely true. I definitely have that. And, when I was doing a dress for one of my friends' rehearsal dinners, it was such a special moment. And she didn't want to wear white because she wanted to wear she wanted to wear the dress when she was on her honeymoon, and she married someone who was from Serbia. And so she really wanted to kind of have an Eastern European influence. And so we worked very closely at picking a beautiful, it was actually a black lace, which sounds very unusual for a rehearsal dinner dress, but it was beautiful black lace with white piping and then bright embroidered flowers all over it. And then we did a white lining underneath. And I know on that day when she wore it, she felt beautiful. And she also felt like she was honoring her new husband's family wearing that dress. And so I loved that we could create something that she was going to then show her daughter one day and say, I wore this, and explain it to her. And it's so much more than just a dress. And that's what I love about fashion is it's usually so much more than just a shirt. And like you said, it's so much more than the jeans. They make you feel more comfortable. They make you feel more yourself.
You mentioned earlier on in the interview that your parents weren't ecstatic about this choice, this journey that you're on when you first started.
Right.
How were you able to overcome the obstacle, that fear of disappointing them, or push into this and just really identify to them that this is something that it's beyond just something you do, it's part of who you are?
Right. Well, like I said, I'm from Colorado, and so we don't have a ton of design here, and it's not a career path that, anybody really takes. And so when I was at the University of San Diego, they have a huge abroad program. Honestly, I guarantee you like 80% of the juniors go abroad first semester junior year.
Yeah.
And so I was in a sorority there, and one of the girls in my sorority who was a year older had just come back from Florence the previous year. And she also is very into fashion, and she was telling me that they have a fashion school at the same school that I was going to be attending. And so I had talked with my abroad counselor and asked her to present fashion classes. And she kept saying, well, you're not going to get credit for these. And I said, no, I know. I'm just curious. Can you just tell me what they are? And so she said, okay. So I figured out that if I took all summer school classes the summer before I left, that I could take only fashion classes there and I wouldn't be behind at all in school. And so I didn't want to tell my parents I was doing this plan because they would be like, no, you need to, just go to Florence, do your normal classes. So I ended up doing that this summer. I told them I just wanted to, be ahead. And then before I left, I said, I'm so excited. I decided I'm going to take fashion classes. This is the perfect time. It's not going to change anything. And so at that point, they were really on board. So I went to Florence, and it was like an amazing, life-changing experience. I always say it's the best time of my life, which is offensive to my husband because he wasn't there.
Yeah.
But it really, truly was amazing. And I got to see the design side, which you don't necessarily get to experience if you're not taking design classes. And it was calming to me, I guess. Like normally people, if they had to sit down and sew for 4 hours, that would drive them crazy. But for me, I looked forward to my classes every day. And I think that's why it was the best semester of my college career, because I was doing something that I was so passionate about. And, we took drawing classes, we took sewing classes. So we learned how to make patterns. And then in the final 2 weeks of school, they did a big fashion show. And so my dress was in the fashion show, and it was amazing to have my best friends at the show supporting me. So when my parents saw, I would say that this wasn't just, a dream, that I actually had some talent and that I actually created this dress they were really on board and really supportive, and they were really excited for me that I found something I was so passionate about. And so that was then really cool to see this huge shift. And I decided to apply to Parsons, and they could not be happier. And before I had applied to Parsons, while I was still in school, I knew I wanted to be in fashion, but I had the opportunity to intern at Vogue.
Oh, wow.
Which was absolutely amazing. But it was definitely not the path I wanted to take, because nothing compared to what I had experienced when I was designing. Nothing fulfilled me as much as actually creating a garment that I could physically see, that I dreamt about in my head. That's what I loved.
You mentioned your time in Florence. During your semester there, you were able to go to the Milan Fashion Week. How was that?
That was absolutely amazing. So one of my teachers was very well connected in the Italian fashion industry. And I knew he wouldn't be able to get our entire class into Milan Fashion Week because someone had asked about it.
Yeah.
But again, this girl in my sorority was like, I think that she had taken his drawing class, and she said, you should go talk to him because he might be able to get you a ticket. So I, after class one day, talked to him and I said, is there any way? It's a dream. Like, it was a dream of mine to go to Milan Fashion Week. And so he was like, let me see. Don't tell anybody else. I said, okay, I promise I won't. And he ended up getting me a ticket to the Iceberg Fashion Show. And I got there super early because I was so excited. I couldn't even stand it. And I got a press pass. So I got into the show very early. I watched the models practice their walk. And then it was probably 20 minutes before the show was about to start, and the whole front row in front of me was empty. So I thought, I'm just going to go sit there. And then if someone tells me to move, I'll move. But I was able to sit there. No one said anything. So I sat front row. It was the best experience. It was absolutely amazing.
That's really, really cool. You went to Parsons School of Design. How did that help further your abilities and skills, and how did that continue your journey to creating what you're creating today?
So Parsons was absolutely amazing at helping us create patterns. They really have an extensive program. And what I loved about it is I did the associate's program because I already had my undergraduate degree. And everybody in my program were people who had gone to college and had been working at another career and decided to come back to school. So everybody took it very seriously, which I appreciated. And I think the teachers appreciated it. So everybody worked really, really hard in that program. And it was amazing because the connections that they had, got us amazing internships. I interned for Naeem Khan the entire time that I was at Parsons. And that was truly an amazing experience. He, I think, is such a talented designer. And what I loved is his company, when I was there, was very small, and he was the only designer. So it was cool because it was a very hands-on experience where he would ask our opinions about things and actually want to hear our feedback. And we were able to see how production is run and how PR is done, and how he designs all his fabrics. So I think that was absolutely amazing. And I would never have had that experience without Parsons. And the teachers at Parsons have all worked in the industry for years and years. So they really, really know what they're talking about. And it was an amazing experience to have those talented teachers teaching us their craft.
That's really, really cool. Now, you launched your company in 2015.
Yeah.
So you've been through about 6 seasons now? Is that right?
So we've done about 5. We took a little break in 2016 with our fall because I was actually pregnant at the time. I had a very complicated pregnancy. And so I was not able to put my whole self into the company. And I thought it'd be best not to stop what I was doing, but just put it on hold for a season. So with every season, you have to go to trade shows, you have to go to all these different events to promote the brand, and I wasn't able to fly or travel. Yeah. And so we just thought for the company, it'd be best to put it on hold instead of trying to make it happen and putting stress on me and the baby, and then also on the company. So we put it on hold, which was definitely a good idea. And my daughter ended up being born 8 weeks early. and she was in the hospital for 5 weeks after that. And I always say, if I didn't stop doing the brand then, like, I have no excuse to stop now, because that was obviously the hardest time of my life. But I was able to continue to do the work, do designing, do all our production while, I sat at the hospital with my daughter. And I'm actually really proud of that I can leave this legacy for her and teach her the things, that my mom taught me.
That's really cool. And legacy is such an important thing to build. And it's something that we talk about in every episode. Can you tell us a little bit about, as a brand, the legacy you're building, the things that are significant in what you're building?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest legacy that I want to build for Luba, and it kind of is the reason that I named the company Luba. I was raised by a very strong woman. She was raised by a strong woman who is the name Luba. She was born in Yugoslavia. She was put in a concentration camp for a time with her family before she ended up coming to the United States. She had 7 kids, and she ended up dying of breast cancer at 42.
Wow.
So she was just this very strong woman, and her sister as well, who I knew as my grandmother, named Baba, was another just fierce woman. And so I wanted to create a brand that didn't have to be masculine, that it could be very feminine, and it could represent a strong woman. And for me, I feel most powerful when I'm dressed very feminine, and I don't have to, put on men's inspired clothing to be taken seriously, that I can be very strong and very powerful just the way I am. And so that's kind of how we created Luba. And, for the Love Foundation, which is our social aspect of our brand where we give back, I knew that I wanted to create this brand that was going to empower women on a deeper level, that it wasn't just going to be, they put on this dress and they feel strong, but actually this dress is giving back money to a women's shelter, and that's giving back money to empower women who maybe don't have that skill right now.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. When you were in San Diego, when you were going to college, you volunteered at a domestic violence shelter. How did that experience kind of change your perception of the world that we live in and the realities of some of the stories, some of the things that these amazing women and children have to go through?
So it was so interesting, like I said, when I was growing up, I volunteered with my mom at shelters a lot, but I also was very naive, and so I don't think I really understood it. And when I was doing the social entrepreneurship project for my class, that's when I was able to actually interview the director of the local shelter there. And she was telling me the biggest issue that they have is they don't have enough room. So they were turning down about 30 women and their children every day.
Wow.
She said it's not about just getting them out. It's about actually creating a place for them to stay for the next 2 years. And so as I did my research more, I found that there was this statistic that said that there are more animal shelters than women's shelters in the US. And that just disturbed me on such a deep level. And I knew that in my life, I want to try and do something more where it's, breaking the cycle. There's so much more to be done. And as I've definitely started on this journey, there's a nonprofit in Colorado called Providence Network. And within Providence Network, there's a shelter for women and children called Joy House. And so the director of Joy House was amazing, and he shared a lot of interesting kind of facts with me. And the biggest one that we were discussing was, he said, everyone says, well, just leave. If the woman just leaves, everything will be better. And he said, but the problem is, usually when they leave, it's worse. They could be homeless, because in an abusive relationship, these women are completely controlled. They don't have a job. They don't have access to any money. They don't maybe have access to go to school or get an education. They're completely separate from everything. So the thought of leaving is terrifying, because they think, well, maybe me being hit is better than my child going without food or a home or being able to afford to go to this school. And so the abuser is normally the breadwinner in this family, and it takes the woman on average 8 times to actually leave.
Wow.
Like 8 times of trying before they actually leave, because it's so challenging. And then he also shared with me that a lot of these women have addiction problems and substance abuse because of the trauma, the emotional and physical trauma that they've been dealing with. And so once they leave, they not only have to deal with, finding a place to stay, all these issues, but they also have to deal with handling their addiction and how they're going to get past that. And he shared a story with me that I would love to share with you about one of their residents was a woman from Nigeria, and her husband had married her in Nigeria and brought her and her daughters over to the U.S. On a work visa. And so it was horrific. I mean, he was terribly abusive, and it took her a very long time to leave. And when she finally left him, well, now all of a sudden she doesn't have any legal status to be in the U.S. anymore.
Wow.
And so her biggest fear was, if I leave, I'm going to be sent back to Nigeria. And because I left him, she would be stoned to death. And she also, being in the U.S., had converted to Christianity from Islam. And so that's a crime in Nigeria.
Yeah.
And so she was like, if I leave him, I will die. But if I stay with him, I will die. And so it was amazing, because through Joy House, it took them 3 years, but they were able to get her daughters and herself actual legal documents to be in the U.S. without him. So I love, hearing stories like that. And there just need to be more shelters. And the problem is, it's not just a short-term, 2-day shelter and get the women out. It's actually a long-term shelter where they can give them education. They can, help them find jobs. They can do childcare. They can help them, learn to budget, things that they never were able to do before.
That's an incredible story, and just so inspirational. I think often we know that there might be an issue, but we can't personify it because we haven't experienced it. I spent several years working at a church in Northern California that was right in the thick of the meth addiction area. And these stories, everyone is quick to give the answer of, oh, they can just go. They can, just like you said. And the truth of the matter is it's a much deeper problem to overcome. And to hear what your organization is doing, your company, by creating the Love Foundation, is an inspiration that business can go beyond just creating revenue. It can create revenue not only for the life of the people that work there, not only for maybe shareholders, but also for their community and for what's happening around them.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's interesting because, like you said, it's not just a quick fix, and it's a lot of times it's even very shameful for the woman. She is very embarrassed. She's not going to talk about it. She's not going to share it. And so I think, having definitely more awareness to domestic violence and more shelters open, it will give women more options and more opportunities to change their life and know that their children are going to be safe by leaving, and know that they're going to be taken care of, and not just jumping and saying, well, I hope everything's going to be fine, that they actually have the opportunity, for those resources.
Now, October is a significant month in what you're doing. Tell us why October is kind of a benchmark month for women's issues, for the shelters and some of the issues we're talking about.
I think it's a huge month because having people talk about it and have it be the forefront of news and a lot of charity events and things that are going on, it gives the victims hope that it's not just being forgotten, that it's actually something that's being talked about. And hopefully it'll be an issue that will become less and less the more we talk about it and the more we bring it forward.
Yeah, it really highlights an issue that I think a lot of people would rather let be unseen or forgotten or just hidden, for that matter. So being able to highlight it in the month of October and just say, hey, look, world, we need to talk about this because it matters, is such an important thing to be able to do.
I truly agree. And I think, the time that we're in, it's very interesting and things are really changing. And Women's rights are really being talked about. And this is a huge, huge women's rights movement that should be talked about and handled. And it's women that should take care of other women. And that's why, I wanted to create a women's brand, because it's women for women, like women empowering women. That's what I love about having a whole month to talk about it, is women actually get to do something about it. And we actually as a society get to do something about it and not just let it be hidden.
It's so cool. Now, you've got a cool product that you're doing in the month of October that's going to help the local Denver shelters. Tell us about that project.
So it's called our Love T-shirt, and it's a white T-shirt that we have embroidered with really cool floral embroidery, and within that embroidery it says love. And it's just more to bring awareness in October as well. 50% of the sales of the shirt will go to our local shelter. It's $50, so it's very affordable for our customers. We really want to get the shirt out there so that we can make a big difference with this shirt. And what's amazing is it's actually embroidered by a factory in India that uses women and pays them fair wages. And so it's another great opportunity to support women that are potentially at risk for domestic violence.
That's really cool. So the shirts are made in LA and then embroidered in India, and then they support the local Denver shelters. It's a really cool circle of seeing how many different pieces are impacting women through this process.
Yes, it really is. And we're a little bit higher price point. And so we wanted to create something that was going to be more for the masses and really get, domestic violence awareness out there, and that people could see it and see it really comes down to just loving, your neighbor.
Yeah.
Support them, help them. And so having that message of love is kind of why we decided to do that. And then another crazy coincidence is Luba actually means love in Russian.
That's so
and
cool.
I didn't know that when I was starting the brand. I had Googled it later on and found that out. And I thought this is such a cool connection to have Luba, the name, mean love, and, have this mission of giving back.
That's so cool. It's weird how some of those things happen and later you find out there's this amazing connection and the meaning goes much deeper than what it seems on the surface.
Mm-hmm. It truly was like a weird aha moment. And I thought, this is so cool that this happened. And it's kind of another driving force of, okay, this is meant to be, keep going.
Yeah.
We can do it.
When you think back, I mean, this brand, your brand, and the foundation are all about empowering women to be powerful, but not trying to mask it by something else, letting them become who they really are. And I love that the story starts with your grandmother and that she loved so well through very difficult situations. She loved her children, did everything she could for them, and how that love was passed on to her, and that she was living out her identity by what she did for her kids, and how that's leaving a legacy now 3 and 4 generations in.
Yes, it's really true. I always talk about this to my mom. It's so funny because my mom would openly say that she is not a feminist. And I always say, that's so funny because you are. You believe that I am equal to my brother and that we have the ability to do whatever we want and so forth. And she, I think, is one of my biggest inspirations. And although I never met her mother, I can just see her mother's spirit in my mom. And I kid you not, at 10, I thought I was going to be the first woman president. I, in my soul, believed that I was going to be the first woman president. And that's because my mom said, yeah, you are. You can be whoever you want. You can do whatever you want to do. You have the power. All you need to do is work hard. And so having that person encourage you is amazing. And she chose to be a stay-at-home mom. And I think it's incredible that she raised her daughters to be a stay-at-home mom if they wanted. They could be a working mom. They could be whoever they wanted to be. And that was powerful, especially growing up with an older brother who got to do all these things, it was cool that I also got to do all those things. And there was never a, well, you're a girl, you can't do that. It was always, yeah, go for it. Go try it. Go do this. And having that kind of encouragement and that strength to be this strong woman.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I think that's really the message, is that it's not, I have to be careful here because I don't want to come off wrong, but it's not about fighting necessarily for rights as much as, I mean, and it is that, but it's as more fighting for women to have the ability to have the identity that they want to create. And it goes beyond just the rights. It's so much deeper.
That exactly describes it, because it's not about having the rights. We have rights. It comes down to, it always bothers me, for example, when people say they're feminists, but they don't support women who are stay-at-home moms. Well, I support that stay-at-home mom because she chose to be that stay-at-home mom. It's about supporting your fellow woman and uplifting her. And, she is powerful in making that choice, that she wants to be a stay-at-home mother and raise her children and make meals for her husband. That's her choice. And that choice in itself is so powerful. And so I loved that I had, such a strong representation of a woman who supported other women, and it didn't matter if they were a working mother because it was their choice. And that's such a beautiful thought about feminism, is it's not about, women taking over the world. It's about women being equal and supporting each other and making their own choice in their daily life and having the ability and power to make their own choice.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive a little bit deeper into Luba and what you're creating. What's your role in the company? What is it that you're the founder and designer, but it seems like you do a lot more than that.
Yes. So we are a new company. So we have a pretty small team. There's about 3 of us. So I pretty much do everything in terms of designing and production, which sounds smallish, but it's actually huge because production is such a intricate part. Like you design the item, it has to go to production. You have to make sure all of your fabric is in. You need every trim, your zippers, your buttons, and then making sure that your factories are on time for your orders. So I am in charge of all of that aspect of the brand, and then kind of just overseeing other things. Like I oversee sales, I oversee our social media. So yeah, I do those aspects of the brand, but it's crazy how much goes into a fashion brand. I remember I was at a party right after I had launched, and I was one of the youngest ones there. I was 26 at the time, or 25 at the time. And I had told this woman, she was probably 35, that I had just started this fashion brand. And she laughed at me and said, well, how do you do that? Like I was just some silly girl.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, actually, and I listed all the things that went into it. And she was really taken aback because she was like, I didn't realize that that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, it's not just like, I'm going to start a fashion brand and this is it. It's like, there's so much more that goes into it. And it's such hard work, and it's very time consuming. But again, if you love it and you love what you're doing, it's not as hard.
One of your main roles is designer. Tell us about that process and the inspiration for your designs.
So usually I start the process of designing by picking out fabrics. My favorite time of year is the New York Fabric Show. I go there 2 times a year, and I really just get to see all the new fabrics. And I usually have an idea of what I want the inspiration for the collection to be before I go to the show, so that it helps me stay focused when I'm there. Because I absolutely love fabric. It's one of my favorite things about the whole design process. And so I can sometimes get carried away. And so having kind of boundaries for myself really helps me. And then a few weeks later, the fabrics come in. And once they're in, I, can really sit with them, feel the different stretch, and think about what would be a beautiful garment, what it would be made of. So from there, I usually then think about events that are going on in my life or my friend's life or just women around me, because I find real women to be a huge inspiration.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I do. I design for myself and my friends and my family. And what's amazing is those designs are the same designs that other women want to wear.
Yeah.
And want to have. And so that's a really cool process. So I'll usually take a few days after I've picked all my fabric and just have a lot of alone time and design all the outfits. And then from there, of course, we weed out the ones that we don't want or don't like. And that's more of a team meeting with some of my business partners. And usually our salesperson is there as well. And we just kind of look at all of our items and see, okay, well, this style did really well last season, so I think for sure bring this in. Or this style seems very young. I don't really know how that's going to sell. So we're a little bit different, I would say, than, a very couture fashion line, because we also need to make money. So we really like to think about, how women are going to wear it, what they will wear it to, and really taking that into thought when we're making everything.
What's like the average age and demographics? What is one of the typical women wearing your fashions? What might they look like?
So I love to describe our Luba girl as someone, she's probably in her late 20s, early 30s. She is very outgoing. She loves to be dressed to the nines. She goes to luncheons. She loves to go to her cocktail party. She's very involved in her community. She has a lot of friends. She's very social. And I think our line is really designed for that life and having fun events to go to. And you want to be in something that stands out, but also, it makes you stand out. It shows you. It shows the wearer. It doesn't, sometimes you try on a dress and all you see is the dress. You don't necessarily see who's wearing it. And so I love to design things where the Luba girl will put it on and it will make her feel better. It will make her feel more confident. It will, like I said in the past, give her almost a superpower. And so what I love about our line is we have clients who are 18 and all the way up to 60. I kid you not.
That's cool.
And I think it's because people can style it the way that they want. And we make a lot of separates. So, I might have a cute short and jacket set that a 20-year-old would wear, and a 6-year-old might buy that jacket. And so, for example, I have this one dress from, I think, 2 springs ago, and it's white tea length and it has a high slit up the leg. And my mom is 55 and loves that dress, and she's worn it multiple times. We went to Greece on a family vacation and she wore it for our family picture. And my little sister, who's 23, also has that dress and wears it a lot. So I love that one garment can be so versatile for different ages.
That's really, really cool. Now, in your process, you design, you source all the materials, and then once they go into production, you do all of that in New York City?
Yeah, so all of our stuff is made in the United States. We actually, for fall, have some of our pieces being made in Los Angeles, which I'm super excited about. So it was very important when I started the company for everything to be made in the U.S., just because I want to support our economy. I want to give jobs here. So it's also been amazing because I'm able to form very personal relationships with the factory owners. My factory in New York, for example, she knows everything about me. I know everything about her. It's so funny. I'll see her right after I had the baby. I came in, she said, "Oh my gosh, you look so skinny. You just had a baby." So I love having that kind of personal relationship with her. And it's great because if I need something rushed because fabric was delayed, she does that for me. And so it's amazing having those personal connections. And I think it's huge, especially in this business where everything seems rushed and everything has to be fast and you need it quickly and you need it immediately. Having those relationships is huge.
Before we dive into our rapid fire questions, throughout your journey, I heard different obstacles that you've had to overcome, and I think people can relate to that. When people experience obstacles, maybe could you share some tips that you use to overcome those?
Sure. I think everyone, obviously, like you said, experiences obstacles. And for me, the biggest thing, which I discussed earlier, is staying positive and having a really positive mindset. I think it's so easy, especially in this industry, to get really caught up in what other people are doing and what's making other people successful. And this industry is you're creating a brand that no one has heard of. Yeah. So it is going to take some time, and that's okay. And I saw the quote that you had on Jumblethink on your website, and I loved it, talking about the beginning, you're so excited, and then in the middle you're like, this is not going to happen. So I think when you're in the middle, to just stay positive and just keep going, that's, I think, the biggest thing.
It's really, really good advice. We're going to dive into rapid fire questions in a moment, but I think there's going to be some people that want to know how they can find and connect with you. So how can they find and connect with you?
So we are on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Shop Luba. And our website is shopluba.com.
And Luba is spelled Luba, right?
Yes.
Perfect. We'll have all those links in the episode notes and everywhere we post to. So if you're listening, make sure to check those and definitely check out what Hannah and her team are creating. Let's dive into some rapid fire questions. What is one tip you would give someone with a big idea or dream and they just don't know where to start?
I would say be naive and jump in. I mean, that sounds so silly, but if they think too hard about it, they're never going to do it. So just jump in and you'll learn as you go, because you're always going to be learning. So jump in.
What is one change that you would like to see in the world?
I would really like to see the treatment of women and girls changed. I think, like I said, I have a daughter. I think it's a huge responsibility to raise a daughter, because I need to teach her to be confident and happy and secure and strong. And so I think if everybody starts raising their children to be that way, and everyone starts raising their children to treat each other as equals, I think it's going to be a huge change in our world.
We talked about a little bit earlier on. What do you want your legacy to be?
I definitely want my legacy to be that I create a lasting company that does good for a lot of women. And I would also like my legacy to be kind of on a smaller scale, that my designs are worn during the best times of people's lives, and that they have that dress as a memory that they then show their child or grandchild.
Who or what inspires you?
I think the person and people that inspire me the most are the strong women in my life. Like I said, my mom is a huge inspiration to me. And she's such a force. If you knew her, you'd be like, she is such a spitfire. She's strong, she's independent, and she is one of the kindest people you will ever meet. So she's a huge inspiration. And also my paternal grandmother is very, very fashionable. We call her Glamma.
Okay.
So she's also a huge inspiration to me. And so just the women in my life, I would say, are huge inspirations.
What are you currently reading, listening, or watching?
Well, I don't have a lot of extra time right now because I have an 18-month-old, but I am obsessed with true crime. So recently I have been listening to a podcast called My Favorite Murder. And it's these two female comedians talking about murder, which is, I know, kind of creepy, but I just love true crime. I would be a detective in another life if I could.
Every episode we end with this last question. What is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
I think a dream that I'm waiting to fulfill and haven't fulfilled yet is that I can grow Luba into a, big enough brand where I'm able to give millions of dollars back every year to women's shelters. That is really a dream that would be huge for me.
That's really, really cool. Hannah, it's been so much fun talking about Luba and Love Foundation and everything you're creating. thanks for taking time out and really inspiring us.
Thank you, too. It was so fun talking to you.
Once again, we want to thank Hannah for taking time out to share her story on the podcast today. You can find links to all of her social channels and her website at jumblethink.com in the episode notes. In the episode, Hannah mentioned a quote that we have on our website. The quote is, "So many of our dreams at first seem impossible, then they seem improbable, and then, when we summon the will, they soon become inevitable." That quote comes from the great Christopher Reeve, better known as Superman to so many of us in our childhood. On Monday, our guest is Bob Stromberg. He is a comedian and a master of creativity. Recently, he was featured on Little Big Shots with Steve Harvey. It's an incredible fun episode. Make sure to check that out this Monday. If you're new to the podcast, I want to invite you to swing on over to iTunes, Stitcher Radio, iHeart, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Hit that subscribe button and make sure that you never miss another Jumblethink episode. Thanks again for tuning in. I hope that this episode has really encouraged you on your journey to chase your big idea and dream and create the world you want to live in.
Les mères de famille, les enfants peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps. Vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.